The Nintendo Switch 2 is apparently targeting 2024 as its release year. They have partnered with Nvidia, and we've been talking for a while about this. The Switch's biggest downfall is that on modern TVs that are larger than say 55 inches or 55 inches and up, plugging your Switch into it if you're sitting at a reasonable distance stretches that out. The 1080p upscaled or 1080p whatever it does to reach 1080p. I think it overclocks it technically, but it goes to 1080p, but that stretched over a big screen looks pretty rough compared to what we get with the PS5, Series X, PC. 4K is the standard now, and so to see a 1080p thing blown up 65, 75, whatever inches, however big your display is a little jarring. Not to mention that it can only do that still at 30 FPS, much less 60. So they've apparently partnered with Nvidia and are working on introducing DLSS as part of this package, which is, I think it's brilliant. I think that is a no-brainer. Imagine DLSS running on a Switch to be able to play something like Mario Kart at actual upscaled 4K. With DLSS tech, I mean, it would look like actual 4K. I think that's brilliant. Brilliant. According to multiple people with knowledge of Nintendo's next-gen console plans, the company is likely to release new hardware during the second half of 2024 to ensure that it has ample stock available on day one and to avoid the kind of shortages that have been seen with the PS5 and Series X. Whoops. Also bear in mind, the Switch, when it launched, had terrible stock shortages. And we all, at the time, I remember there was a lot of conspiracy theories going on where people were like, they might be intentionally shorting the inventory so that it hypes people up even more. And so it's artificial scarcity to make people think that it's more in demand than it is, to kind of create a buying frenzy. I don't think that's what was actually happening, especially as the dust has settled. It just seems like they weren't able to order enough of the micro processors that they need. But still, I mean, it's good to see that apparently they're going to try and start manufacturing probably early to middle of next year and then release in the second half of the year towards the holidays to make sure that they have plenty of inventory when people are looking for them. Although specific details on the console are being kept closely guarded, those VGC spoke to indicated that the next-gen console would be able to be used in portable mode similar to the Switch. What exactly this looks like, we don't know, but apparently it is a hybrid console again. So it might just be a Switch 2. It might be kind of like the 3DS versus the DS. It might be something like that. It's not clear yet, but it does seem that it's going to be a mobile slash dockable hybrid again. Two sources VGC spoke to suggested that the console could launch with an LCD screen instead of the more premium OLED in order to bring down costs, especially considering this increased storage needed for higher fidelity games. The current Switch comes with just 32 gigabytes of internal memory, while most current gen PlayStation and Xbox games are over 100. Yeah, just for one game, they're over 100. So I guess they're going to try to increase the storage. I can't imagine Nintendo goes to 256 or 500. They probably bring a 500 gig option and that's it, or rather a 100 gig option and that's it, and then rely on micro SD cards for expansion, I would assume. But if they're planning on bringing current gen games to the Switch, I don't know if that works. I think you have to have something even faster than micro SD cards. Micro SD cards are actually pretty slow, which is why you can't just expand anything with that. I remember I saw a video, I think it was from Linus Tech Tips a while back, where they tried to use a micro SD card as their game storage for their PC. So they downloaded a bunch of Steam games onto it and tried to play them off of the micro SD card, and it did not work at all. So I don't think that they could do that and expect to see current gen games come over, but we'll see. I'm sure they've thought of all of this. Let's see. It'll have physical games via a cartridge slot. I think that's great. I love the cartridges on the Switch. Other details such as backwards compatibility, support for Switch games, physical and digital, remains unclear. Nintendo has said that it wants to convert as many of the Switch's 100 million plus user base as possible to its next system, although some third-party publishers are said to have expressed concern that legacy support for Switch games could negatively affect sales of next-gen titles. It's true. I mean, you think about it, if you were to buy a Switch 2, but all of the games you bought on the Switch original run on it, you might not have that much push to go and buy stuff day one for your new console. Whereas it's like, oh, the Witcher 3 ported to the Switch 2 runs way better, but you have to buy it again. That to them would be much more lucrative, so we'll see what they do with it. Nintendo did not immediately respond to comment. Tokyo-based industry consultant Dr. Serkan Todo told VGC that a 2024 console launch would make sense for Nintendo since it's projected to see double-digit declines in Switch hardware and software sales this year after it cleared 7 years in the market, which is insane. I mean, next year in March, it'll be 7 years since the Switch came out, which makes me feel ancient. That's crazy, but I mean, yeah, it's 7 years since it came out in March. That's a good lifespan for something like this, but it also means that they need to figure out what's next. I would generally say that looking at Nintendo's financials, it seems clear that it's time for a new piece of hardware in 2024. Hardware is already projected to fall 16.5% year on year in the current fiscal, while the minus for software is expected to hit 15.9. And this is also just something like many of us, I think, can probably attest to this. Like, I haven't touched my Switch in a minute. I mean, it's since Tears of the Kingdom, but I played a bunch of Tears of the Kingdom and then I started to kind of feel burnt out. So I shifted and started playing on my ROG Ally and playing Baldur's Gate and stuff on that. No need to really boot up the Switch anymore. So I haven't touched my Switch in a minute. And prior to that, it had been months and months and months since I had played on my Switch. And that means that players aren't on the eShop. They're not engaging with it constantly, so they have very little reason to spend money actively on it. And then also when consoles reach the end of their lifespans, usually they are pretty outdated, so they aren't keeping up with current games that people want to play. And also, everybody's kind of braced for the new things, so they don't want to get even more entrenched in this generation because they know the next one's coming. So it's just a stack on stack on stack of a bunch of stuff. Yeah, if they're targeting a Q4 release next year, I'd expect the company to have multiple games ready to go for launch. I mean, this is interesting. By the time holiday period arrived in 2017, they had Mario, Zelda, Splatoon, Mario Kart. That's a no-brainer. I mean, I think personally, and I guess in chat, let me know what you think. What do you think the launch games are for the Switch 2? I would guess a new Mario Kart game. I'm guessing probably a new Mario, all on launch. Or like, you know, Mario on launch day and then Mario Kart a month later or 2 weeks later or something. They probably port the Hogwarts Legacy day one. I think that's an easy grab. People are going to lose it for that. Oh, Chris, interesting. You think they remaster Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? That could be interesting. I could see that. Especially like improved graphics, higher resolutions and frame rates. That could be interesting. Mario Party. Yeah, I think that they could Cyberpunk. I think they could bring a lot of these. Oh, Skyrim probably unironically will be there. I think they can bring a lot of these probably day one comfortably. There were rumors and leaks that they had brought early prototypes of the Switch 2 to Gamescom, and they were showing some select developers the hardware, and that some of them have dev kits. So apparently it's already out there with devs. And if that's true, I mean, they're trying very hard to avoid the problem the Switch had, which was that there was Breath of the Wild and not much else on launch day. And then it took like 6 months to a year for there to be enough games to really justify having a Switch. And then it was just a flood of every third-party studio was creating stuff, and it was just everywhere. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think that they're going to try very hard to avoid those mistakes that they made initially. Can't wait for 35 FPS. You're damn right. But I mean, apparently in these rumors and leaks, they're saying that they can achieve graphical fidelity roughly on par with the Series X and PS5 by way of upscaling. I mean, I don't know how much I believe that, but upscaling is crazy cool. They're not going to be ray tracing or anything on this, but I think it's very reasonable to expect that we could see like Cyberpunk unironically running on the Switch 2, probably at like 720p or at 540p upscaled. Like, I don't think that's that outrageous. He took my thing.